It must be tough to do economic development in a third world country. I mean, think of the differences between doing business here in Canada versus in, say, Kyrgyzstan. Here in Canada, you can find out the rules for starting a business. You can figure out what permits you need and apply for them. You know what the fees are. You pay for them. Sure, there's red tape, but at the end of the day, there's the rule of law. You might need a lawyer to help navigate the system. You might need to lobby the occasional decision maker. But more or less, it's stable, predictable, and not too corrupt. And if it is, you can always go to our independent law courts for a remedy, or even to the free press. Now, compare that with trying to do business in the third world. I mean, I chose Kyrgyzstan, but really any place where the police are corrupt, where bribes are commonplace, where the rules change depending on what official presents himself, where violence is commonplace, and there might even be gangs or paramilitary groups roving around, where there's a clannish or tribal hostility to outsiders, even if those outsiders come with the promise of jobs, like in a mine or something. I guess what I'm saying is, one of Canada's great advantages in the world is our rule of law, the lack of corruption in our public officials, and the harsh condemnation of corruption when we do find it, as we recently did en masse in Quebec. It's one reason why we're so wealthy compared to Kyrgyzstan. People here aren't afraid to spend millions, even billions of dollars investing in Canada because they know it won't be stolen. That's Canada's advantage. Rule of law, property rights, low corruption, transparency, and the state monopoly on violence. That is, our cops and our soldiers are not used for political purposes. Okay, that's the story, but there's a huge exception to this in Canada. I'm talking about mines or oil and gas activity or pipelines on land that is claimed by Indians. I mean, just to be clear, I'm not talking about actual Indian reserves, those 600 or so small towns that dot Canada, most with fewer than 1,000 people in them. I'm talking about the vast tracts of land that were never granted to Indians, that at most Indians have a residual right to hunt and gather on. See, all those things that make Canada a healthy, modern, fair, peaceful, stable, predictable place to do business and invest and work and live your life, they're being thrown out of the window by extremist elements in Canada, the coalition between foreign environmentalist lobby groups and radical Canadian Indian bands. As you know, resource companies, oil and gas, fracking, mining, forestry, those are by far the biggest employer of Indians in Canada. But extremist eco-groups, usually funded by foreign money, have teamed up with lawless gangs on the ground, like I Don't Know More, to turn vast tracts of Canada into little patches of Kyrgyzstan, places where the rule of law doesn't hold, where it's the rule of man or the rule of gangs. Like in Rexton, New Brunswick, where a month ago the Micmac warrior gang had a massive riot against police who were trying to allow a completely lawful oil and gas exploration in that province. This is straight out of Kyrgyzstan. A company comes in, makes a huge investment, hires people, brings in expensive equipment, starts to do their work, but then, surprise, they're ambushed by third world lawlessness or subject to vandalism, theft, arson, even kidnapping in New Brunswick. And third world style, when the media dares to report on this corruption, the media itself is targeted too. Like our own Chris Sims, who was threatened with violence and was the subject of an attempted carjacking by Tyson Peters, a member of the Micmac Warriors gang. We caught it all on tape, but the police there, in true Kyrgyzstani style, haven't bothered to arrest Tyson Peters yet. Well, yesterday, a lawyer for the oil and gas company, the company's nicknamed Swin, went to the gang clubhouse of the Micmac Warrior gang, basically like a local business owner popping by the Hells Angels clubhouse to try to make peace. Now, this lawyer, Michael Connors, stopped by the gang clubhouse to say in his super white, super anal, super lawyerly, super Canadian way, hey fellas, we're gonna try to pretend we're in Canada, not Kyrgyzstan, so can we please be allowed to work without you torching our trucks, okay? Here, look.
If the shale gas is good, I'm not going to do that. But there's things that we can't change. Work will resume next week. We hope it'll be finished, weather permitting, in 14 days. I'm not asking anyone not to go to Route 11. I'm not asking anybody not to protest. But I am asking that we don't do anything that would lead to violence.
So he's saying they're going to work for a couple of weeks. Sorry, guys, is that okay? But don't riot again. Now, this being Canada, not Kyrgyzstan, Swin is fine with political protests. You heard that, but not the torch your car, block the Queen's Highway variety of lawlessness. Listen.
Unfortunately, blockades do lead to violence.
Fracking gas leads to violence too.
We can get through 2 weeks, and then we'll go away for a while. I'm not saying we're not going to come back. We may not come back.
So fracking gas leads to violence. Did you hear that? Did you know that? Over 1 million wells have been fracked in the United States, hundreds of thousands in Canada. Fracking does not lead to violence. That's like saying digging a mine leads to violence or running a convenience store leads to violence. It's a bizarre statement that blames the victim for what you do to them. It's what a mafia shakedown tough guy might say to a poor 7-Eleven owner. Hey, if you sell cigarettes and soda pop in this neighborhood without giving me a cut, that would lead to violence. But this super Canadian lawyer thinks he's talking to people who respect the rule of law. He's trying to bargain with them. He says if they just pretty please let Swin work for a bit, they'll drop a lawsuit against people who threatened them and destroyed their property in the past.
Swin did not come to New Brunswick to sue people. That's not what they came here for.
You just came to destroy our lives.
We don't want them here.
If we can get through this without violence, and I think what I'd like to do is extend a gesture of good faith. I'll drop the lawsuit against Miss Nolan, and then once we're finished, for those who did not participate in violence, we'll drop those too.
Yeah, it's true. Swin's business model is about finding oil and gas, not suing gang members. But the gang doesn't care. They're not scared of being sued. They love it. That's sort of their business, breaking the law. Here, let's ask Micmac Warrior Chief. That's what this gang calls their leader. Let's ask a chief.
As us, as natives and the protectors of this land, we are going to protect it. It's our land. We never ceded this land, and we are going to protect it.
Yeah, their conversation just goes downhill from here. Poor Mr. Connors, he thinks he's in Canada. He's not. He's in Micmac country. It's Kyrgyzstani rules now.
So there's nowhere in the maritime provinces that you are going to get your equipment into.
Did you get that? If Swin tries to do business anywhere in the Atlantic, it will be stopped, not by the law, but by the lawless. Not by police, but by paramilitaries that operate despite the police. Police too afraid to charge them with carjacking, our own reporter, Chris Sims. Who rules in Kyrgyzstan? Well, it's a good question, and the answer is probably whoever says they do and has the guns to back it up. Well, who rules New Brunswick? The answer used to be the democratically elected government, limited by its liberal constitution, supported by its professional, politically neutral police force, and morally backed up by its people. But that answer doesn't really hold true today, now does it? And the longer it doesn't, the more Kyrgyzstani things are going to get. Yeah, I predict more riots. Don't you?